Welcome back to Road to Resilience, recapturing athletes' focus. I'm Luke Lettet, and here with Goal Central and our Goal Central ambassadors, Brad Harmon and Mark Rigg. Good morning, gentlemen. How you guys going?
Good, you?
Yeah, really good, mate.
Awesome. So we're back for another week. Trust you guys are getting so much value out of what we're doing so far and what we've brought forward. And there's one thing that I've forgot to add to our last podcast was, if you guys have questions, definitely send them through. support@goalcentral.com.au. We'll do our best to answer any questions you guys have, direct them to myself, Brad, or Mark. It doesn't matter who you, or to all three of us, and we'll give you guys a shout out onto the next podcast. So, or if you don't mind, if you rather the Facebook thing, jump onto the Goal Central community page and just ask away. We're always lingering around there. So this week we're going to focus a little bit more on balance between life and sport. You can't play your sport forever, and even if you did, you're not going to play elite level forever. And at some point, you're going to have to step aside and allow the next young thing to come through. And there's no way around that. And I think that for me, and I tell this to every athlete that I speak to, balance is the key. Wouldn't you agree, Mark?
Yeah, 100%, Luke. Couldn't agree anymore. Very, very important to find a balance between life and sport, and to have a life outside of the sport that you play. When you finish your career, you've got so many different avenues to go into, whether that be coaching or depending on how high up you play in your sport. Could be the media, could be anything, but you've still got to have family time, you've still got to have friend time, you've still got to have downtime for yourself to just let go and enjoy yourself and muck around, hang out with your mates and do dumb stuff that you like to do with them. And I know that's what I like to do. I don't get to do a hell of a lot of it at the moment, but I know that in the off season, that's when I get that chance to do that sort of stuff. So yeah, families. Those athletes out there with families that find that important to do. Spend the time with your kids while they're young, because they're only young once. And what you miss out on now, you can't catch up on later. So while you can't be there for everything, it's finding that balance between what works for you as a family unit, and to make sure that family unit is still there when you finish sport.
Yeah, definitely. What do you reckon, Brad?
Yeah, it's obviously massive, and certainly it's the last 2, 3, 4 years of an athlete's career that they really start to value the balance. And I know that when I had signed my contract to go to the States, and I had coaches, friends saying, do your schooling, maybe enroll in this course, and all I was hearing as an athlete at that time was, well, you're telling me that I'm going to fail. And I didn't want to hear that, right? All I said was, no, I'm going to make it to the major leagues, and I'm going to have a long career, and everything's going to be good. What I didn't realize, that having something away from sport, and an extension of that is having something that you're passionate about away from sport, will allow you to invest more into your sport. And what I mean by that is, going away from the baseball field for me, when things were going poorly, all I did was stay awake at night, in my own head, constantly really struggling with what was going on. And if only I had something that I was passionate about away from the field, whatever that might be, it would completely take baseball out of my head and allow baseball to become my outlet again. However, baseball became my all-consuming thing in my life, and I didn't have an outlet away from it. So finding the balance and having something, certainly the last couple of years that I've been playing, I've got my family, I've got my 2-year-old son, and things are fantastic. And now baseball is a bit of an outlet, and it's fun. And regardless of if I do well or if I do poorly, I come home and my family's there, and that's great. And I don't lay awake at night. Baseball, it is what it is. It's a game that I love, and I love helping the younger guys coming through, but I've got something else important, and it's more important than baseball. But the point is, there's something else that's important in my life away from sport. So by having that, I'm able to switch off from baseball, and I can only think how that may have helped me as a 22-year-old or a 21-year-old playing professionally over in America. If I had something that would allow me to switch off from baseball, how would that have helped me when I went to the field the next day? I may be a little more refreshed. I may look at things a little differently, rather than be all-consuming, focusing on baseball 24/7. And in the end, it just wore me down, and I was just tired and exhausted all the time, is how I felt. So balance is huge.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny that you just said what you said there, Brad, is that in this room that we're in right now, on the wall it says, change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. And it was said by Wayne Dyer, great man who's passed away now, but it's true. If we change the way we look at it, balance is really important, because it would have I would assume, being high level athletes that you guys were, the effect on the relationships that you guys had would have been strained at times, wouldn't it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And when I had my relationship with my wife,
When you had it.
when I had a relationship with my wife, before we were married, we had a 2-year-old daughter at the time as well, and that was massive for all of us. Having to deal with me going away at that stage, we would fly up to Sydney most weekends and play softball. We would train 3 days a week, and that was really hard for her to deal with, and was hard for me to deal with her not dealing with it as well. So there was no balance then at the time, because I would go to training or go and play, come home, fight, argue, bicker, and there was no fun stage in my life, because I'd take that back to the training ground or to the playing field and let my frustrations out, and just, who knows, let one go through the box and hit someone and let my frustrations out that way. But there was no balance then, and we've all grown up a lot since then, and now it's fantastic. There is a balance. There's understanding. There's more conversation around all of that, and I make a lot of time myself now to have family time. She makes a lot of time for herself and for family time as well, and the kids have their time. My kids are now out playing as well, so that's really good as well, to be able to go and just sit and watch them enjoy what they're doing, and that's another aspect as well that brings it to it as for something else to focus on at that time. So balance, and the more, what I've found myself is the more things you have to balance, the easier it gets.
Yep. Definitely.
Yeah.
I think a key word you just used there, Mark, was understanding, and that's really important from both the athlete perspective as well as the partner's perspective. And I was in the same boat where my now wife, girlfriend at the time, would come to America, and I would have been a terrible guy to be around. And my whole day was based on how I went at the field that night. And I had and she was constantly trying to support me and lift my spirits and get me back up. At the same time, it would have been great I wouldn't have been able to articulate it at the time, but to have a conversation and have her understand. She knew that I was struggling, but understand why I was struggling, how I was struggling, and so forth. And then for me to stop being selfish, because we're selfish as athletes and it's all about us and getting to where we need to be, but for me to have the understanding of what she's going through, because that would have been really hard for her, probably harder for her than it was for me. She's flown to America, and I'm in a crap mood the whole time because I'm not playing well. So we certainly weren't having a really bad relationship, but we weren't having fun. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot to do with my performance on the baseball field, which is really unfair for her. So as an athlete, we need to have that understanding, is a really good word, of our family and our surroundings and how we affect others. And likewise, because my wife would have been trying to do everything she possibly could to help me get back up, perhaps I just needed something slightly different to what she was doing. That she was given all the support she knew how to give, but I was so self-consumed and everything was about me that I didn't have the understanding, and we didn't have that connection at that time.
Yeah. And I guess that actually coaching the athletes that I have over the past, and even some of the interviews that we've had that you can see on our website, one thing that's always come up is the identity issue, hasn't it? It's massive. It's such a key thing, is that you are not the sum of what you do. You are not the sum of the sport that you play. And even to the point now, like if I'm coaching a sports team, or whatever sport I'm doing, and sometimes I'll come home and my wife will say to me, so what's happening at this team? What's happening at that team? Blah, blah, blah. And I'll go, you know what? I just don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, I can appreciate that you want to know that sort of stuff, but you know what? I'm done. What's going on with you? And I found actually that shifted the focus of our relationship to the external bit can be the external bit. Let it be that and let it stay there. Yeah? But that's not the sum of who I am. There's more to what I'm doing. If you wanted to talk about the coaching, the one-on-one coaching stuff that I was doing, or the understanding of what's, some of the leadership programs that we run at schools and let's talk about that. I'm cool, let's talk about that. But you want to talk to me about some of the stuff that like coaching softball teams or whatever, I don't want to talk about that. Does that ever happen for you guys in terms of that identity that happens?
Yeah.
I'm not a softball coach. I am still Luke Leterre. Yeah?
Yeah, 100%. That happens to me quite often, whether that be through the softball coaching now or through working. You have a really bad day at work, and managing people is a very difficult job. And I just resonate exactly with what you said then, is that I walk in the door from work, and the first question that I get asked is, how was your day at work? And I go, let's just talk about something else. How was your day? What are you doing? What are the kids doing? Let's just... And that's when I switch into Mark the dad and Mark the husband, because you do forget about that. That is who you are. That is your identity. I am not Mark the coach, Mark the general manager. I'm Mark me, who you get now. And that's very important, and it's hard to articulate that between families often. But it's a very important line to draw, I believe, is that, don't forget who you actually are.
Yeah, definitely. You have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just the fact that I couldn't agree more. And a lot of the times, for me personally, I would base, my whole mood or who I am is based on my performance at the field that day. And especially now with a family, a 2-year-old running around, as soon as I come home, the first question isn't always how'd you go today, which I find a great thing. It's I come home and how's the little fella going? How are you guys? As soon as you take the focus and attention away from you, the athlete, and where am I now? What am I doing? Exactly what you just said, Mark. Now, I'm home. I'm a dad. Baseball is my outlet. Here I am as a father, a husband, and put the focus on others. Nothing else matters at that time. So whether it's family or another outlet, whatever it might be, having that balance to leave yourself, in baseball, we talk about leave it in the clubhouse, and that you got to separate that stuff, and it really is so important. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, definitely. And there's one thing that I guess that everybody, it doesn't matter what sport you're in, you will connect with this one thing I'm about to say. There is a lot of drama in sport. There is heaps of drama in sport, even more in team sports. It's huge. There's political drama. There is team drama. There is disconnections in teams. There's disconnections with coaches. There's crowds. There's so much
Social media.
Bang.
Yeah.
Bang. Social media. And that ramps it up even more, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And you got to let it go.
Yeah.
You just have to let it go and don't lose who you are. Don't become this online person who just is a keyboard warrior sitting there typing stuff out to people. We're all human. We're all people.
Yep, definitely.
And that goes back to a previous podcast of Am I Good Enough?
Yeah.
You'll always find someone that says you're not good enough.
Yeah, roger that.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Just being comfortable with who you are and the understanding.
Yeah. And it was one... Yeah, go on, sorry.
I was going to say, that's what happens when you're at the top of your game and you are someone who goes out there and does what they do. People are always going to try and smash you down.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way that we work as humans, unfortunately.
Yeah. The one thing that I wanted to touch on this is that what you were just saying before, Brad, was about pushing the focus onto somebody else to give more instead of, and this is going to be really tough at the start, I would imagine, for most athletes, because they're so self-centered, because that's what made you who you are. That's what pushed you to be at the top half of the group that you're in, or the sport that you're in. If you weren't that, you wouldn't be there. But there is times in which you need to turn that off. Would you agree?
Definitely.
I've found in one time that before I'd actually done, we're going to talk about values in a later podcast, but the one thing that I noticed was that for me, leadership, I thought I valued leadership. I valued myself as a leader. And one thing that I did to my detriment was I thought I had to value, so if I valued leadership as my number one, then I had to act that way, act accordingly. So my leadership was through the roof, was out of control. It was leadership on steroids, which upset lots of people, and it still does sometimes. I still have those times where I'm really hard out and get it done now, not tomorrow. Now, let's go now. Everything's now, and I learned that I didn't need to be that anymore. Leadership was just inherent in me. I didn't have to do that anymore. I just had to be me, and it's the same thing here. Is that sometimes when you're out there on the track, when you're out there with your making sure that you're eating right, making sure you're keeping up with your fitness, making sure you're keeping up with your team goals and your own personal goals, that's when the selfish channel gets turned right up. But when you're at home and when you've left the sporting ground and you're not doing that thing that has to be done for you, then it's time to start giving to others. Wouldn't you agree?
Definitely.
100%, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we get lost in that, I think.
Yeah,
Athletes
absolutely.
get lost a lot with that.
Yep. Yeah, I think what Brad was saying is later in your career you sort of realise that and you try and help others and that sort of stuff. But I guess you could focus on doing that right from the start. You become an all-round athlete an all-round good person, and that's what we need more of in the world, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And I suppose the difficult part of that is athletes would see that as they're taking away from their number one goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yet what we really need to understand that by doing this and placing some focus and some energy elsewhere, what you're doing is investing in your career, because it's going to come back around to you and allow your sport to be fun and to be an outlet for you. And, if you're lucky enough to play at the elite level and your sport is your job, when it's all consuming, it's a job. It is a flat out job that you struggle to get up out of bed and go. But when we have those other focuses, those areas, the balance, we're able to put our energy into others, sport can become fun again. Regardless of the result, we're always going to be disappointed as elite athletes. We're competitive, we want to succeed, and that's fine. That's who we are. That's why we got to the top. But without those outlets, those tough times become really tough, and it just becomes a job.
So we have to sort of wrap up really quickly here, but there's a couple more questions I want to ask you guys around this subject. Is athletes don't normally see sacrifice in something. They see it in their sport only. They don't see it in the exterior stuff that sits around them, whether that be in their support systems or their support people, family, what have you, or their friends. And I guess it really comes down to, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to sacrifice for balance?
I think a lot of the time you don't actually know that you're sacrificing anything. And so you're making a choice to go and do what you're going to do. And that's where the balance is key. Once you've worked out what your balance is, then you can sacrifice something. So I think working out the balance first and having those other areas is key to choosing that sacrifice. And like you've been saying, Brad, when you're self-consuming, you don't know what's going on around you. You don't have a clue about other things necessarily. So once you've found those, once you can see those, then you can make that sacrifice and choose what you're going to do and what you're going to give up in order to get to where you want to get to.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it'd probably be an interesting question if you asked an athlete like what you just said, Mark. Athletes don't really see that they're giving up too much. They just know that this is the path, this is what they need to do, so be it. They're not losing out. They're doing this to allow them to do this. If you were to ask an athlete's wife, partner, girlfriend, whatever it might be, what the athlete sacrifices, you'd probably get a different story. Yeah. And they would see, well, we're sacrificing family time over here, this event, this function, this time with the family. There's a lot of sacrifices there. So like what you're just saying, it's identifying it and realizing that you're right, you need to step back sometimes. And a lot of the times it might be sacrificing, but you don't realize it. So speaking with someone else, your family, your partner, you might be able to identify it and say, okay, well, now I'm going to focus some attention over here in these areas.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. So the three things that I wanted to just sort of touch on here to end this podcast was, the first thing is make sure that we're giving to external people. Turn off the athlete and be the person, whoever you are, when you're away. The second thing here that I wanted to add here is, what you value is what you'll do, no matter what. So if you're not understanding what you value, if you don't know what it is that you're sacrificing, then you can't fix anything that you're unaware of. So if we were to, and I hope that anybody who's listening to this will do this right now, you'll grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, and write down the things that sit externally around you, the things that somebody could suggest that you are sacrificing. Family, friends, time away, time for yourself, whatever that is. And it will probably all revolve around time with certain groups, certain people. However, write them down, because when they're looking at you from the page up, they become real. And that's when things start to shift. And then start time managing that time around that. Time with your family, making sure that you're hitting those sorts of goals. One thing that Brad was saying just before was about the laser focus that we have, and we're not seeing sacrifices, we're only seeing where we can go, the next step, the next level, wherever we're trying to achieve. Imagine if you use that laser focus into the balance of your life, how great your life would be, and the support around you being the athlete that you are now, how strong you could be then, how much faster you could be then, how much more resilient and emotionally intelligent you could be then. And one last thing to touch on around time management is this is a must for anybody I coach, you must put 1 hour per week away for you where you just sit there and do nothing. It could be just to listen to music, preferably stay away from media. One thing that I did when I was playing was I used to walk just down the road to a little lake that's near my house and just sit there. And let whatever comes up, come up. If you feel like crying, cry. Allow the emotions to come up. If you feel like laughing for no particular reason, do it. Just do whatever comes up in the moment because you're doing it for a purpose. There's a reason why your body needs to let go of that, so allow it to happen. And that there will help you with your life because you'll see how you're giving yourself the space to understand what's happening for you now and where you need to adjust, whether that be for your sport or whether that be for your life in general. So I trust that you guys got so much more value out of that. These boys are giving you guys so much in terms of their life story and the sorts of things that they've gone through to be elite. And not just be elite, because these guys here, they're not just elite players, not elite sportsmen, they're elite people. And I hope you guys are getting so much value out of what they've got here to offer you.
So until next time, keep striving for greatness.